1991 was the year that Sega began to fight the 16-bit console war for real, with the release of Sonic the Hedgehog on the Mega Drive. A game that was faster, bolder and cooler than any platform on the market, it is no surprise that the game was such a success, propelling the Blue Hedgehog to stardom and making the Mega Drive a must-have gaming system, even as the release of Nintendo's rival 16-bit system was fast approaching. It was too successful a game for Sega not to release a follow-up, and that's exactly what happened, as the project to develop a sequel started in November of 1991. Yuji Naka, the creator of Sonic the Hedgehog, ended up moving part of the development of this eagerly awaited sequel over to America as part of the newly founded Sega Technical Institute. With teams in Japan and America working on the project, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was finally released in 1992 as part of an unprecedented synchronised release date that was fiercely marketed throughout the world. And while the game hit Japanese shelves on November the 21st, 1992, for gamers in America and Europe, November 24th, 92 was Sonic Tuesday, with the Australian market receiving the game just a week later on December the 1st. Even today, it's incredibly rare for the entire world to receive a game in the space of just over a week, so for Sega to attempt and achieve this feat was nothing short of impressive. Personally, I have very fond memories of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. My parents had bought me a Mega Drive with the original Sonic for my birthday that September, and my dad worked with print machinery and ended up doing some of the print finishing work for some of Sega's promotional materials just for Sonic 2's release, and he would bring home some of these materials to show me. All the artwork made me incredibly excited for the game itself, so when I unwrapped a shiny copy of Sonic 2 for Christmas, you can only imagine how excited I was. And when I slotted that game into my Mega Drive, I was not disappointed. Not one bit. Before even pressing a button, this game was something special. The opening chorus of... the opening text introducing us to Sonic and Miles' Tails' prower, and of course that title screen itself, as Sonic bursts out, closely followed by the debut of Tails, the fox with two... tails. Here was a sequel that took everything great about the original and crammed more of that great stuff into an 8 megabit cartridge. What comes most strikingly are the visuals. While the original Sonic the Hedgehog looked great, at times it did use a muted, almost pastel colour scheme in some levels. For the sequel, each stage was littered with bright, colourful and bold sprites on top of these blinding, colourful backgrounds, and while every sprite taken from the original game has been tweaked in some way, even Sonic himself was given a slight little change just to make him that bit cooler. Of course, he ended up with even more animations, including the now infamous idle animations, and a few funnier ones for when the blue blur is teetering on the edge of a platform. Meanwhile, Tails was the big new popular addition. During the single player game, he would be Sonic's constant invulnerable companion, able to collect rings, fight enemies, and would even fly a biplane in one of the later levels. Should he die or lag behind Sonic, Tails would fly in with his two tails, but this was a function that was not available to players until the advent of Sonic the Hedgehog 3. In all honesty, Tails was just the same as Sonic, only with a slightly different sprite. But that didn't stop players wanting to play as this cute little mammal, and they could, as players were able to play the game as Sonic and Tails, Sonic alone, or Tails alone. In the single player Sonic and Tails mode, Tails could be controlled using the second controller without interrupting play, but this wasn't the only way to play as him. A brand new split screen versus mode was added, giving two players the chance to race through a small selection of levels to reach the end post first, or in the special stage collect the most rings. Playing on a very squashed screen and with only a couple of levels available meant that this wasn't a mode that many players went back to often, but at least it was something different. There's something to be said for playing a 2D platformer competitively, especially with the addition of new random power-ups such as the Robotnik blocks that hurt the player and the dreaded teleport block that swaps players' locations, which is either a major help if you're lagging behind or an incredibly frustrating occurrence if you're in the lead. Like the best split screen games, it's the sort of mode that would make or break friendships, and most likely break. But whether you were Sonic or Tails, the single player mode was just fantastic, taking you through 11 zones of platforming. The beauty of the 16-bit Sonic games was never that you went fast all of the time, rather that you didn't. Much like the other Mega Drive Sonic games, the levels were designed in such a way that they had plenty of areas to explore and hazards to overcome, and that when you got past those barriers you'd be rewarded with a section where you could just speed along as fast as you liked. The physics of the game were some of the best feeling mechanics in the 16-bit generation, offering a sense of acceleration and inertia that differed from Super Mario's brand of controlled platforming. The selection of zones this time around were a varied bunch, featuring locales such as the rocky hilltop zone, the scorching heat of Oil Ocean, and the industrial steam nightmare of Metropolis Zone. As always, several memorable gimmicks come into play in certain levels, from the working slot machines in Casino Night Zone to the biplane straddling gameplay of the Sky Chase Zone. Each area is memorable in its own way, which only serves to make Sonic 2 such an incredible platformer. Once again, Dr. Robotnik appears at the end of each zone, with a new contraption specially created to squish Sonic into tiny little hedgehog chunks, and it's always a pleasure to see him floating in on his tiny craft, moustache twitching as he laughs. In a way, he's like a video game Wile E. Coyote, full of technical tricks and yet is still outmatched every single time. Sonic 2 feels like a faster game than the original, and somehow it got even faster when you collected all the Chaos Emeralds. In Sonic the Hedgehog, the hoarding of Chaos Emeralds in special stages was a surreal diversion that offered very little apart from a means of unlocking the proper ending. In Sonic 2, however, they became much more than that. With 7 emeralds to collect this time instead of the previous 6, the tubular special stages were tough but exhilarating. Once again, collecting them all would earn you the proper ending after besting Dr. Robotnik, but it would also unlock Sonic's ultimate form, Super Sonic. With 7 Chaos Emeralds, 50 rings and a little jump in the air, Sonic would become a yellow sparkling blur of power. Invincible from everything except being crushed or falling down a bottomless pit, he was Sonic at his fastest, able to run at full speed in just a few steps. But this upgrade did come with the caveat that Sonic would only stay super provided he kept collecting rings, as the horde of shiny golden circles will continue to diminish until no rings are left, restoring Sonic to his normal blue state. With the modern day Sonic becoming little more than a joke, it is so incredibly difficult to remember just how massive the arrival of a new Sonic game was. The hype for this game was absolutely huge, but very well justified. Sonic 3 might have been larger in scale, but for me, personally, Sonic 2 is the greater of the 16-bit Sonic games, no matter what a certain Colin Mahern might think, and maybe even one of his best ever games. And it proved to the world that Sonic is a valid platforming hero, and cemented the Mega Drive as a damn fine system. That's it for this episode of the Retrocast. We are just one of many shows you can watch on the God is a Geek YouTube channel, so why not subscribe and gorge on our daily video content. We'd also love you to forever if you contributed to our crowdfunding campaign at patreon.com/godisageek. Not only do you get exclusive content and early access to most of our videos, but you'll also have earned your good deed for the day. If you want to see more of me for some reason, you can also follow my own personal channel Pughoof Gaming, or tune in on Monday for another reason to be cheerful. The Retrocast will be back in 2 weeks, so I will see you then. Goodbye.
Should have backed the God is a Geek Patreon.